The Dragon Lord's Consort Chapter 12. The Trial of the Consort Part 2. Spike held to the back of Ember's shoulders as she flew through the skies. Despite his somewhat increased weight gain, she still flew with ease as he held onto her. Though it was a rough start, she managed to get off the ground and head towards where the trials were to be held. High above the sky, Spike saw hundreds of dragons of various sizes, all flying towards the same destination. Looking at them, he felt so small compared to them. The sun was nearing its center point into the sky, and Spike could feel the ticking clock of his fate coming. Fear was his greatest emotion. Doubt was his negative view on the world, and anxiety was drowned by hopelessness. But he knew that he had to stay strong, not just for Ember, but himself. To the future of how his kind will treat him and see what a dragon raised by ponies could really lead up to. As they approached to the center, which was an extremely large canyon range or valley shaped into a bowl, which looked like it could seat or hold maybe hundreds of dragons of various sizes, a multitude of dragons flew towards the giant arena, and while he thought he would just be out in the open to do the trials, he didn't really have any idea that he would really be viewed all around. This just looks way worse than the Equestrian Games some time ago, though in truth, he hoped one of the trials didn't really involve singing. Then, he spotted them. The biggest dragons to grace the lands that made the larger ones that he had encountered prior to Torch look meek. They could be considered mountains in the distance, if not for their colors. Between Torch and Spike's visual of other dragons, Spike had to assess that they were not only the biggest dragons, but they were the dragons that were given titles. Standing almost equally in height was a dark forest green dragon with an ash-gray underbelly with some scales and spines. His maw was more squared than Torch's, while his horns came in too, pointed back and away from his head. He had no wings, meaning that he was the largest dragon that he had ever seen without them, and if Spike were honest, he wondered if he was going to be the type of dragon to grow extremely huge, but without a pair of wings. Next to him was a scarlet-hide dragon with a deep maroon underbelly. Several large scars were seen over its body, some bigger than dragon's length. Flying closer, Spike managed to hear the voice of the dragon interacting with the others, clarifying that it was indeed a female. He inwardly winced as they drew closer and saw that she had deep tissue scars. They were all healed by the years, but not by treatment. If it weren't for the fact that she actually grew to her current size, Spike would have thought that she fought some huge beasts and this was their final result for battle. Next to her was another female, judging by her voice as well, who was a pure shiny black with a silver underbelly. Unlike the others, she was much smaller, yet she continued on as if she were the same size as the other dragons. What made her more interesting, though, is that she wasn't only just smaller, but she had a lean body, and her horn tips bent down instead of up. She also wore what seemed to be a brace around her tail made out of metallic alloy. He would store that question later when he got the chance, but now, however, they were making their way towards the larger dragons near the center of the arena, and in full view of hundreds of dragons. Almost front and center, Amethyst and Garble were there, along with Garble's crew and a few other smaller dragons. The teens all stood behind them, various sizes, shapes, and colors. Ember hovered over in a circle near the center, just as the taller dragons had finished their conversations. She took 3 heavy beats of her wings before landing, and he hopped off her and stood by her. Looking up at the larger dragon, she felt her heart begin to beat heavily. Spike's did as well, which is why he hoped that as he stood by Ember, she wouldn't mind if he placed his tail on top of hers. She didn't, actually wrapping her larger tail around his. The 4 larger dragons turned to the arrivals, and with that, the sun had hit the sky center. All 4 dragons lifted their giant paws and slammed them down onto the floor, causing a boom to echo loudly and blast dirt into the air. Both Ember and Spike shielded their eyes, while other dragons merely flinched. Any and all chatter that surrounded the arena had come to a sudden silence, and it was at that moment that Spike realized how serious this was going to be. Torch, being the tallest, spoke but nothing that portrayed anger, not fear including. Instead, his voice carried something of a leader and a dragon with a purpose. The day has come for the Dragon Lord to have chosen a consort worthy of sharing the throne of power. What has been the 2nd week of her rule since she acquired the Bloodstone Scepter, she has yet to create a fault or error in her choices that lead us astray. Looking down at his daughter, the large dragon gave a small snort and turned towards the others. The male next to Torch spoke after. As the current elder, I bestow the new Dragon Lord and her current consort with a quick blessing of faith and prosperity. May their odds be on their sides. Ember bowed her head towards the elder. Spike saw her do this and quickly bowed his head as well. The first elder gave a small snort of acknowledgement before motioning for the maroon dragoness next to him. With the trials here before us now, I too bless these two and pray for their best in their trials.
Being the last successor, I hope that your futures are written in the stars.
Once more, the two bowed at their blessing. Spike surprisingly felt Ember tightening her tail on his, but in a comforting manner. The last dragoness, however, didn't even speak. Instead, she just lowered her large head towards the two. Spike almost jumped back as her head came into view while Ember did her best to hold him steady with her tail. Spike just stared up at her, somewhat fearful as her purple eyes gazed upon him. The odd gray eyeshadow somewhat enhanced her purple eyes, almost giving them a small shimmer. It kind of reminded him of Twilight for some reason.
Before I give my blessing,
She began with a voice so gentle, so delicate. Spike never thought for it to be possible for a dragon to speak so angelic and soft.
I must know a bit of you before I do. The others bless whoever comes to them as per tradition, but I, as the advisor, must be given something in exchange. I must know your history, where you hail from, and why you think that by doing this, your future is worth being by your side. Now, if you only wish to be as part of her horde or mate, nothing else, I will only ask of your past, and that would be it. But, if you wish to be something more, I must know what I am looking at.
Spike didn't know how to answer, nor was he able to respond. He turned to Ember, seeing if she could help out, but she just shook her head and realized that this was on him. Once more, the events of the Equestrian Games came into mind, and he wondered if he would choke up because of the situation he was in. Thousands and thousands of thoughts came into mind, with his overreactive imagination running amok and threatening to ruin what he and Ember had going. If he failed, if he were to publicly humiliate or just ruin what Ember has, all of it would be his fault. What came next was a gentle ease of the larger dragoness's eyes, and when he stared into them, it was almost as if his heart just slowed. With the fear easing out of him, a sort of gentle humming and glow came from her, and he wondered if there was like some magic involved or something like that. Kind of feeling the ease, he found some words building, and whether that was through confidence or just self-realization. And then he spoke out loud to her.
My name is Spike. I come from Equestria, where I was raised.
Truly? She asked.
How queer for a dragon to come from the land of ponies, is it not?
Somehow this got a few dragons, Garble's crew, whom happened to be in front of the crowd, to chuckle at that. Ember bristled at the advisor's outspoken words, yet she remained quiet on that matter. Spike shook his head, not heeding towards the heckle from the other dragons.
No, it is not. I actually lived with them my whole life, and I love it there. And did they keep you as a pet at a zoo?
She questioned. A bit of anger surged up in Spike, but it was quickly calmed by her gaze. Instead, he just spoke evenly, still loud enough for those close to hear.
No. They never treated me like that. I was treated as a friend, as a brother, and more. I never got mistreated badly, nor was I ever treated as something less.
The advisor blinked her eyes heavily, still focusing entirely on him.
And whom was your sire, or dam?
At this he paused, and he wasn't really sure how to answer.
I don't know. I was born without parents.
An eerie silence fell upon the arena. Nothing but the heated winds that passed through and seemed to carry his words throughout the valley. Spike suddenly felt thousands of eyes upon him, but more so than ever. Yes, the dragons were looking at him before, but he felt that now. Now they were really, really invested in him. From the corners of his eyes, he saw Ember filled with sadness, while he swore he saw the other dragons behind him look so suddenly diverted in emotions. Meanwhile, the advisor before him blinked her eyes, and he saw moisture forming upon them.
Is this true? Truly?
She asked, as if she just couldn't believe it.
You have no recollection of your parents? Nor hide, nor scales, memories left by your egg?
The sadness that left her voice was so powerful. Spike swore he was going to cry for his own sake, too. Shaking his head, he answered.
No. I was... From what I was told, ponies found my egg, and it was to be given to a pony who was worthy of hatching it.
When he meant worthy, he left out that it was a part of a test that may make seem ponies more evil than dragons knew of. Still, he just kept going, though.
When I was hatched, the ponies raised me as their own, and then I kind of grew up alongside of them. Princess Celestia was like a surrogate mother to me, while the other pony whom hatched me was, well, my sister.
The dragoness remained silent, and the single tear she shed, it made him want to run and hug her. Why was she so emotional for him? Why did she care for a little dragon like him? As if reading his thoughts, she spoke once more.
To hear that one, such as young as yourself, to be without a sire or dam is truly saddening. A dragoness is to protect her eggs with her life, or the sire to guard it until they are old enough to do so on their own. You say that the ponies, they just found your egg, yet you have never questioned it or tried to find your origins at all?
Spike felt the question, and it seemed odd to him, but it should have been straightforward. But it wasn't.
They were scared of dragons. I mean, why would they try to find them to return an egg?
He saw a mixture of emotions run over her face, from confusion to his words, to sadness, to disbelief, and pain of his history before finally settling on anger.
Regardless of their fears, to take a dragon egg away or to not try and return it to a dragon is a crime on itself. They should have left it in front of a dragon, and any dragon. They should have brought it here so that they could find a clutch to be adopted to.
She raised her head and looked at the hundreds of dragons around her.
By law, any and all dragon eggs that have no clutch to any sires or dams should be brought here. It is our duty to protect our young.
The voice echoed loudly and harshly at that, as a lot of dragons lowered their heads in fear or discomfort at her anger. The other 3 dragons quickly seized the situation before it further escalated.
Elianza, control yourself!
The maroon dragon half yelled, using her wings to calm the situation. Torch and the Elder tried to calm down the smaller dragoness into an eased state. Meanwhile, Spike was hiding behind Ember as she took a defensive stance and was using her own body to protect him. Other dragons were visibly shook by her sudden outcry and stood on guard should she become hostile. It didn't come to that, and as quickly as she was to anger, it dissipated. She blinked, her breathing heavy and strong with her eyes of many upon her. Shame filled her mind as she lowered her head.
Forgive me, all of you. I didn't mean for this to rile up.
Her eyes then focused on the 2 younger dragons before her, especially Spike, whom was just as fearful of her as before. A twist in her heart made her saddened to know that she caused fear to the little Drake. She wished to apologize to him, however, with the current Dragon Lord protecting him, she dared not approach him.
I have overstepped my boundaries.
For now, stated Torch. If you wish, Cynthia and Derain could continue the trials without you. She quickly shook her head.
I will remain steady. Just let me clear myself until the end of the trials.
She paused. Then she remembered her final verse. Keeping her distance, she spoke to Spike.
Whatever you choose, how you choose to spend your life with the Dragon Lord, you have my blessing.
Spike blinked at her blessing, but despite his fear, he gave a polite bow, as did Ember. Turning to the other dragon, she lowered her head and moved behind. Their focus then went to the 2 younger dragons. Spike had stepped to Ember's side now, but kept a wary eye at Elianza. She kept her head down, though she would steal glances at him when it wasn't on the other dragons. Torch once more took on the speaking role. It is now time to begin the trials. Roars of approval echoed loudly throughout the valley, causing the very ground to shake. Spike felt the ripples in his body, wondering if this truly meant the beginning, or did it mean the end?